Photography is an expensive hobby. Even if you try and do it in an affordable way, the cost of gear and travel soon mounts up. So should you just bite the bullet and fork out for an expensive camera, or might there actually be some advantages to using more affordable gear? So I'm not going to lie, woodland photography at this time of year can be pretty tough. It's just before we've started getting any real growth back in the woodland again. Everything's still dead, and unless you've got fog or mist, there's not a lot of atmosphere in the forest anymore. That's why I've come here with all these evergreen trees to try and get something. But today's less about getting really good photos and more about enjoying my hobby. And that's what I wanted to talk about today when it comes to expensive gear. Now, what I don't want you to think is that this is going to be a video about does gear matter. We all know that gear matters. Having expensive gear will produce better results. That's the reason I bought a more expensive video camera. My whole business is based around having good video quality. If that's lacking, then there's something missing from my business. So I spent the money to get a good camera. But I think there are some really, really good reasons to have a more affordable camera for photography, especially if it's your hobby. Let me show you what I mean. So let's get an obvious point out of the way. Do we really need expensive gear for our photography? When it comes to my work, the vast majority of the photography work that I do is for online use. Social media, websites, that sort of thing. I don't need a 60 megapixel sensor with 15 grand's worth of kit for my photography. There are some people out there who absolutely need that for their photography. Professional photographers who do massive ad campaigns, people who are doing wedding photography might need an expensive camera with super sharp autofocus. But I'd hazard a guess that for 99% of the people watching this channel, as long as you have a camera that can produce good, sharp photos of a decent quality, then you have more than enough than you need to enjoy photography. Now, one often overlooked advantage to using more entry-level gear is just how easy they are to use. The barrier between photographer and photo is much narrower when you've got a very easy to use camera. A lot of people forget the fact that when you buy very expensive pro level gear, it comes with very expensive pro level settings. And these, if you're not a very, very experienced photographer, can be quite difficult to get your head around, and they can really slow you down between you and your composition. For example, on many entry-level cameras, there are very few settings that you can choose from. And while you have these settings on pro cameras, there's also a whole host of sub-settings within those settings that you could adjust, change, and you can very easily get bogged down. This adds a lot of friction between you as the photographer and the image that you want to get. And don't get me wrong, having those settings can mean that you get even better photos if you know what you're doing with them and you've got the time to put into them. But for most people, even the cheapest of modern cameras has every setting that we need to get a good photo. And I think a large part of the fun of photography is having this very narrow barrier between you and the photo that you want to take. Unless you're an absolute tech nerd, it's very difficult to actually enjoy the settings part of photography. You know, knowing exactly what everything does, what point autofocus you should choose, the meter in mode, everything like that. These are important things to learn as you progress in your photography. But if you're just doing photography for the enjoyment of it, then these things are just something that gets in the way of you and your photo. For example, on this camera, the Can 250D, what would be classed as an entry-level camera to the vast majority of people, there's a setting that is specifically designed for beginners to learn photography. Now, I've never used this feature because I didn't need it when I bought this camera, but for somebody that's just getting into photography, having this feature available can mean that you're instantly enjoying your hobby. It's a guided mode, basically. As you can see here, we've got aperture priority mode. It tells you exactly what it does. But the great thing about it is, as you change settings, it tells you what it's going to do to your photo. And what that means is that if you are somebody that's just doing photography for the enjoyment of it, you can instantly get the pictures that you want without having to faff with a load of settings. Now, there will be some people that are of the opinion that you shouldn't use that mode because it does make you a real photographer. But I'm here to tell you that it's completely fine to use those sorts of modes. It's not cheating to use the easier modes on your camera. They're there for a reason. There are a very small contingent of photographers who are photography snobs and will never shoot out of anything other than manual mode. And really, we don't need to worry about those sorts of people. As long as you are enjoying your photography and you get good images out of what you do, that's all that matters. If you stick with it and keep practicing and do photography with the intention of getting better, then it doesn't matter what other people think. You can become a really good photographer doing it that way. I do think it's important to try and push yourself to get better at photography, but don't do it to the expectations of others. Make sure that you hone your craft in a way that you enjoy doing, and that means that you can keep doing it as well. Keeping it sustainable is really important. And if you care about what others think, then it's not sustainable. Whoa. I know it might not look it, but it is proper slippy on here. Some bits are like super grippy like this, and all of a sudden you step on one patch and you just go, whoa. I know we're still very much in winter, but on days like today, I can start to feel my life come back, my energy. Winter really doesn't suit me. I think like a lot of people, I really struggle, especially by the end of January. It might have come across in my videos, but I enjoy winter from a photography point of view. But from a life point of view, I find winter very difficult. The short days where you can't get a lot done, the long nights, the lack of sunshine. It really, in the UK anyway, we get very little days like this, especially this winter. We had nowhere near as many like crisp, clear days like today as we needed. So when it gets to February and there's signs of spring, there's lambs about, snowdrops, I've even seen a few daffodils, and you get a sunny day like today, I feel like my life comes back. I start feeling like I can enjoy myself again. It's great. When you've got a hobby like this you enjoy, and you get days out that you enjoy, that really makes a difference just to everyday life. And it's the camera that enables that. That's what I love about photography so much. So I've got this composition before. There's this beautiful tree here that's got an S-bend in it, with this nice root system that kind of generates leading lines up into it, and there's a repeating pattern. Now, often with woodland photography, I really like to get in on the detail. Lots of people in woodland photography prefer wide scenes, but for me personally, that doesn't really suit my style. In last week's video, I talked about simplicity in photography, and one of the hardest places to have simplicity in photography is in woodland, because there's a lot of complication, especially this time of year when there's just a lot of dead branches. There's an awful lot of brown, not much colour, which can make for quite ugly scenes. Whereas when you get close in on details like this and find patterns and shapes, that's where you can really start to bring out either abstract things or more artistic scenes. It really does suit my style a lot more with woodland photography. I've learned that over the years. I tried doing wide scenes with woodland photography, but I can never manage to get it right. There are some woodland photographers that I have a huge amount of respect for. That it is an area of photography where you really have to hone that craft. At some point in my photography career, I think I'm going to dedicate a number of months just to woodland photography to really hone that skill. But for now, because I'm a simple man, I'm happy with these simple compositions. By the way, one of the ways that I fund these sorts of tutorials and photography trips is through the Joshua Pegg Photography Club. Yeah, you thought you were going to get away with not hearing it this week. Well, I just wanted to thank the people that have already joined. I couldn't believe that, even though I haven't actually added anything to it yet, people have joined, so thank you so much. But having said that, all the photos from today's video will be edited with the new presets that I've created specifically for that club, which means that anybody that joins with the little join button underneath this video can have those presets. Even if you only join for 1 month, there'll be a link that you can click to go and download those presets and keep forever. And I genuinely want to thank you to those of you who have joined. It does make a massive difference in order for me to keep on making these videos, so thank you. Now, one thing to bear in mind when you are buying entry-level gear is their build quality. Now, I'm really pleased with the build quality of this Canon. It feels solid. It survived a couple of drops, but it isn't weather sealed. I talked about that in a video a couple of weeks ago. There's a little damage to the screen on this. I have no idea how it happened. It appeared on a really cold, frosty day. One thing I've observed with using cameras over the years is that you do get what you pay for when it comes to build quality. If you need a camera that is going to be resilient, then spending a little bit more is absolutely worth it. I'm not too worried about the resilience of this camera. To be honest, this costs less than a month's rent to buy another body. So when you put it in that, it puts it in perspective. And it's lasted me a long time, this body has. It's got me some great photos. But if you're in really harsh environments all the time, somewhere that's very sandy, very windy, where your camera's likely to drop or it's going to get very wet, then spending that little bit extra to get a weather sealed camera is absolutely worth it. My video camera is weather sealed, and that was an absolute stipulation. I wanted to be able to film whatever conditions I was in. But with a lot of entry level cameras, their build quality is good enough for most people. But I did just want to add that in as a caveat, because I don't want you going out spending not an insignificant amount of money on a camera just to have it be destroyed within a few weeks' time because of the conditions that you work in. And if you're a bit clumsy like me, then it is really worth it. And I'm also not saying that if you can afford an expensive camera that you shouldn't get one. For a lot of people, they absolutely do need an expensive camera. If it's your profession, you are absolutely reliant on your camera for work, then spending that bit more will make a difference. But here's a few questions you can ask before choosing a camera that can help you to decide what you actually need. Can it take good photos? Can it take sharp photos? Can it survive the sort of conditions I'm going to be working in? And do I enjoy using it? That one is a vitally important one that we often forget to ask. If you can answer those 4 questions with yes, then whatever camera fits into those categories will suit you just fine. But of course, getting the most out of any camera that we have is vitally important. Well, this playlist here contains a few videos that have got some really good tips that you can apply to your own photography to make sure that you get good photos no matter what camera it is that you use. I'll see you next time.